Good morning, everybody. It's good to see you guys again and to be here to present this uh, webinar on high blood pressure. Some questions were asked, and it's good to actually begin to understand, because it's a really important subject from the perspective that it is one of the biggest issues as far as health is concerned. And if we just look at some of the statistics just relating to South Africa, and these you can look at from a global perspective as well. And having a look under the search on the internet on statistics South Africa, the rising non-communicable diseases, a looming health crisis, the highest age standardized mortality rates or deaths per 100,000 persons were observed for cardiovascular diseases, followed by cancer, then diabetes, and then chronic lower respiratory diseases. So it gives you some idea of what the situation as far as we're concerned. And cardiovascular diseases sit there right at the top, and globally this is in actual fact the way it is. And there's we can explain why that is the case, and you'll see a little bit further as we go into the presentation. So deaths due to cardiovascular disease or CVD have steadily increased between around about 2009 to 2018, and that's the latest sort of stats that we can see. So you can understand or expect that through to today in 2024, we have even a bigger increase. And if you can see from 2008 through to 2018, that increase, it's almost doubled. And what we're seeing today and also internationally is a situation where it's just getting worse, and there's obviously got to be a reason for it. And we'll talk a little bit about that when we look at the the causes and what is behind all of this. So the number one cause of death in the world is cardiac disease. And initially the governments have always said, they give advice from the health departments, what do you do? And they've always said, and still currently do say pretty much this: eat fat-free things, find low fat, stop eating butter, eat margarine, take cholesterol-lowering medications like the statins. And the only thing that has really done is increase the amounts of cognitive disease in terms of Alzheimer's and dementia. And the reason for that is it blocks the pathway that the liver uses to produce CoQ10, which is in itself heart protective. So it's actually hindering something that we need to make sure that our hearts remain healthy. And in fact, in Japan, CoQ10 is something that they prescribe. The doctors over there actually use it for this very reason, to keep hearts healthy at the end of the day. The other thing about cholesterol is it also affects sex hormones and can impact things like fertility, risks of cancer, things like breast cancer and so on, and many other hormonal interactions in our body. So it very often has a more negative effect than positive. Cholesterol is actually necessary for our brains, and it's also an anti-inflammatory. It acts as an anti-inflammatory in our body, and inflammation is one of the biggest causes of disease, or the main cause of what we see as disease, whatever type of disease you're talking about. They've also said limit salt, so they limit the sodium, and it's actually more important rather to get a balance between the potassium and your hydration than simply get rid of the sodium. Sodium is necessary. We need sodium in our bodies, but again, we can't overdo it. And only now are health authorities beginning to recognize, because of the huge amount of information and research being put on the table about reducing sugar in our diets, and how absolutely important that is at the end of the day. High blood pressure is really a silent killer. We generally don't see too many symptoms, and it's only when we go for checkups and we pick up rising blood pressure, or you pick up a high cholesterol, and even that has got to be looked at again, because the way that we've measured cholesterol in the past and what they say about cholesterol, you've got to look at it from a completely different perspective now, not just looking at HDL, LDL and triglycerides. You need to look at the ratios. You need to have a better look at what is happening with your diet. So when we look at dealing with blood pressure, they've also said, and basically promoted medicines, and unfortunately the medicines only treat the symptoms, not the root cause. So it's effectively managing the disease, not preventing it, and not healing it or sorting it out. And what are the root causes, which is, I think, one of the questions that have come up to now. What causes and why do we have this issue of high blood pressure? And in the day and age that we live, there's this chronic stress, and chronic stress unfortunately brings about with it many other issues and problems. You have a situation where your cortisol levels are kept high, so you're in this constant flight and fright mode, which is something that should only be there for acute stress. We unfortunately live it almost every day of our lives. The other thing is diets that we have, and as they refer to the American diet, they call it the SAD diet, the standard American diet, which is a highly processed, refined, very unhealthy, toxic diet, and that's what people are eating in the majority. You go into a supermarket and see how if you can find stuff that doesn't have all sorts of different ingredients and E numbers and things that you don't recognize. We need to go back to eating raw. We need to go back to eating natural food as we've known it in the past. The other thing is obviously excess alcohol. Smoking has been proven to be a problem. Poor sleep, and sleep actually is more of an issue than we realize. It causes so many different issues relating to your weight and obviously to your cardiovascular health. Sleep apnea, which is this thing which a lot of people suffer from, where they are not breathing properly at night, and they virtually stop breathing, and it actually causes a lot of stress on the heart. And people have actually known, in fact I know that my first boss in my pharmaceutical career, in fact, passed away as a result of sleep apnea. The other thing is electrolyte imbalances. We don't always look after our sodium and potassium, and those are the two that work closely together. So rather than just try and reduce your sodium, you need to make sure you've got sufficient potassium to bring that balance back into sync again. We're also very often not drinking enough water. We have excess sugars in our diets and refined sugars, and carbs are not a bad thing, but you need to have the right types of carbs. We have so many nutritional problems, and our food is nutrient poor, as we know from Neolife. We understand why our products work so well is because we have an issue in our food system where what we're getting is actually lower nutrient food than we have known in the past. So our diets generally are pretty poor, and that's what's causing a lot of the inflammation related to the sugar as well and the high carbs. You get the oxidative stress, and then of course the damage to organs, and that's where the damage comes in with the blood vessels, because more than the cholesterol, it's being found now that our carb and sugar levels are in fact and the diabetes and metabolic syndromes are having a bigger influence on our cardiovascular disease than simply having what we call high cholesterol. Excess sugar in the diet is causing insulin resistance, and we're getting this thing of pre-diabetes and then moving on to diabetes and the metabolic syndrome. And that results very often in obesity and the visceral fat, which puts pressure on organs, because visceral fat first comes down around the belly and then moves to other organs in the body. And that's what is the unhealthy or very unhealthy fat, all driving this metabolic disease and what comes along with metabolic disease. Heavy metals are also another issue, where we have a lot of toxins in our water, a lot of toxins around us and in our environment, which are causing problems and ill health. The ultra-processed foods, as we've spoken about, the things that we eat, and so often it's more the hidden salt and sugar and other toxins, the GMOs and all sorts of other things that they've added to the food to make it tasty and addictive, which are causing problems. And all of those things add to the ill health and the cardiovascular disease. Excess omega-6 in our diets, and we're finding that we need some omega-6, but omega-6 is in actual fact inflammatory. We need the omega-3 fats, which are anti-inflammatory, and the omega-6 is coming from things like the processed oils, and people are very often not aware. A lot of the seed oils, we look at the things like the canola, which is in actual fact more synthetic. We look at many of the other seed oils like sunflower and so on. The way that those things are produced, they are actually becoming inflammatory, and those are the kind of things which begin to start causing damage to our arteries and to our cardiovascular system. Also potassium and magnesium deficiency. The potassium helps keep sodium in line, and magnesium as well. Magnesium, in fact, relaxes the cardiovascular system and is very necessary, and very often we have deficiencies of that. Also, lack of exercise. We have a society which is becoming a lot less active than in the past, and with the social media and computers and phones, etc., people are not getting as much exercise as they need to. And it doesn't mean getting vigorous exercise, it means getting up and moving. There are also secondary factors like kidney disease. We're finding a big increase in kidney disease and kidney failure at the moment, and it's also a result of a lot of the toxins that we're putting into our bodies, and that we're not treating them well. Very high protein, excessively high protein diets, which are also things that can cause issues with that. Celiac disease, diabetes, we've mentioned the sleep apnea, and a number of other conditions that add to and put stress on our cardiovascular system and our hearts and so on, which you've got to become aware of and work at preventing. As I've said, high blood pressure is an insidious thing, and it's often symptomless until we suddenly find that we're in a position where we have a heart attack or a stroke or something similar to that. And you often don't see symptoms, but one can also experience things like chest pains. There can be confusion, headaches, ear noise, and things like tinnitus and so on, irregular heartbeat, nosebleeds we've seen in a number of people. And I saw recently with a friend that went to a meeting, and we had exactly that, a very bad nosebleed, which we had to get off to the doctor and get it sorted out quickly. But that was as a result of the high blood pressure which she was experiencing. Tiredness, and then of course also vision changes. So what can we do to reduce this and prevent the problem? And prevention is far, obviously, as I always say, far better than actually getting yourself to the position and then trying to deal with it. Prevent things and maintain a healthy lifestyle. And one of the most important things is this blood sugar balancing, and really that is, it's simply a way of controlling the carbohydrate in your system. It doesn't mean don't eat carbohydrates. It means eating things in a balanced way that you keep your blood sugar level as possible, to reduce the inflammation, reduce the oxidative stress, which are the things that cause the aging, cause the degeneration of our bodies at the end of the day. We need to remove the refined sugars. We also need to remove things like, believe it or not, very often milk from the diet. When with cancer patients, first two things we do is we try and get rid of all the sugars that are and carbs that are feeding the cancer, and also the milk, which is very often causing a fair amount of the inflammation. So it's just things to be aware of. Some of us can take more milk than others, but you need to be aware of it, that it is inflammatory and can cause problems. We need to remove toxic foods from our diets, and that's mostly the ultra-processed foods. We live in an environment today where that's really, you go into the supermarket and you have a look, you will find the majority of the foods. I battle when I go into the supermarket to find anything that I can actually buy off the main shelves. I head for the sections where we've got the raw whole foods, and as I say, you should try and get and eat things which has a label which tells you what it is, not all the different things that it's made up of, which are very often processed and very often synthetic toxic substances. We need to eat a whole food, plain or plant-rich diet at the end of the day. We need to eat potassium-rich foods, and that's really things like the dark green vegetables, have nuts, seeds, things like flax seeds are particularly good. We need to have high fiber in our diet to feed the microorganisms that we need in our body to get the microbiome and a healthy gut up again. We need to increase magnesium in our diets, and that can also be done through food. We also have, as Neolife, we have magnesium, we have that in its own, and we also have it within the multivits and so on. So there are ways to get it, and sometimes we do need to supplement like that. We need to make sure that we're having good carbs, cut down on the refined carbs, increase seeds and nuts. Make sure you have that on a daily basis. That's something that I do. I measure out my nuts, and I have that, make sure that I have that every single day of my life, because it's the way to prevent the problem. We need to have the right fats, omega-3 fats, which we can find in sardines, anchovies, mackerel, herring and salmon. And of course we have a brilliant product in our salmon omega-3 which we can use, and something I in fact use also every day of my life. Chicken, lamb, and these things need to be grass-fed because so much of our food is fed in a very unhealthy way, and that means that it's not getting the nutrients into the meat that we need to then eat after it's been slaughtered and brought to us in a supermarket. We need to avoid excess omega-6. They're inflammatory, and they're mostly, as I've said, in processed seed oils like the canola and sunflower oil. In your cooking, to use things like coconut oil, olive oil when we're cooking our foods. The two best oils that you can use, coconut is the first prize, olive oil is the next one. And the other thing is to use olive oil on your vegetables and salad dressings, etc. And just to be aware, when you go out to eat, the majority of the oils that they're going to be using are going to be processed seed oil. So just think about that when you do go out and eat. And it's not to say you can't and don't do it. Do it now and again, not as a rule. Make your own salad dressings with olive oil. Use apple cider vinegar as well. They're very nice things that you can do by making these kind of things yourself. We also need to avoid concentrated juices, and the thing to remember with juices is that they are, when they are juiced, they're concentrating the actual sugar. They take away the fiber and they leave you just with a sugar concentrate. So if you're going to have that, it's a good thing to have fruit juices, water them down at least 50-50. It won't change the flavor that much, but it's way healthier for you to do. And then be aware of things like carbonated drinks, which create acidity and make your body acidic. We should be trying to head to get to an alkaline around about 7.2. It's a healthy way to live, and is far better for our bodies at the end of the day. Avoid hydrogenated fats, and eat things like protein breakfast. And the thing I mentioned initially is they said don't eat butter. Butter is not a bad thing. It's way better than margarine, and rather eat the butter just in moderation. It's gone through this phase where butter has been said to be not good for you. It is in actual fact way better for you than any margarine that you can take. So rather use butter and use it in moderation. Our salt and sodium and potassium, as I've said, very often what happens is the balance is wrong. We need to increase the potassium to help manage our sodium levels so that they work together to ensure that we have the correct levels rather than just say killing all the sodium. You need salt, you need sodium, and it's not a thing to just say, well, you cut out of your system. Be careful of it in a lot of the low-fat, fat-reduced products. They will very often put it in there, and it's in a lot of the sauces and those kind of things, and that's where you need to watch out for it. Plant foods can also increase your potassium levels, something that you need to be aware of, and try and rather do that. Refined foods contain high sodium salts, as I've said as well. And keep your magnesium levels up to ensure that you don't lose the potassium, because again, it plays a role in making sure that potassium is okay. So a number of those electrolytes are very important to keep in check, and it's not just to get rid of one, but to make sure that you have good levels of all of them: magnesium, potassium, and sodium. And calcium very often takes care of itself, but it's also involved in very much in the bones and in the muscle structures and so on. We need to increase plant foods that we eat, potassium and magnesium, and the dark green vegetables, potatoes, bananas, avos, those kind of things all contain very good levels of potassium. So get a lot of it naturally from your foods. The other thing is with salt, it's also important to look at the type of salt that you're eating. Himalayan pink salt from a good source, and things like Celtic salt are of the best salts you can use. Normal salt is actually mineral deficient. They've stripped it of the majority of the goodness and the nutrients that you need, and you need to go back to natural salts like the Himalayan pink salt, which is in fact what I currently use. And then if you can get, but just Celtic salt is going to be expensive. Himalayan pink salt from a good source is actually just fine and works really well. Flax seeds are another thing which improves or counters insulin resistance. Really good thing to do. So in your seeds, make sure that you're eating particularly that as well, or including that. Alcohol is generally out, not a good thing if you have it in moderation. And when we talk about moderation, a lot of people say, well, a glass of wine or whatever a day. I'd say go even less than that if you can. Alcohol just affects your gut, and has no nutrients in it whatsoever. The less that you can take, the better. Watch out for excess sodium, but also enough is also very important. You need to make sure that you have sufficient. Try also not eating before you're going to bed, because that impacts and affects insulin resistance, and that will just bring about weight gain, tend to move you towards obesity. Pay attention also to regular sleep, and that you get your circadian rhythm back in place, because that affects all of your hormones. It affects your weight. It affects the cardiovascular health. There's so many different things. Sleep is way more important than we actually recognize or understand. Getting sufficient, good, healthy sleep and sleeping through the night. And there are things we can help with if people want to know about that. Get up early if you can and stay in a routine. Getting that first sun in the morning is really important to getting your circadian rhythms right and getting your body going properly, so that everything, your hormones are switched on and everything works correctly. Eat real food. Don't eat plastic food. Don't eat what has been processed by somebody else. Exercise, even if it is just that you're walking. Get some exercise. Move. Get your heart rate up half an hour a day, and just get going. Get some kind of exercise. And lose weight if you need to. It's very important to keep our weight down to a level that is equivalent or good for us. Excess weight with the excess weight around your belly, and of course the visceral fat, all of those kind of things just put pressure on our heart, makes the heart work harder, and has negative impact as far as our cardiovascular health is concerned. And then stress, a huge one. People again don't understand when we're messing with our hormones and our cortisol, insulin levels, and the other related hormones with the chronic stress that we have. We can't just get rid of stress. What we've got to do is learn to manage stress, and there are various ways of doing that. Whether you do exercise, you walk, you put up things like journaling, you do mindfulness things to actually try and control and manage your chronic stress. And as I say, I look at things when I'm coaching people is, things like meditation, journaling, using breathing exercises, using yoga and Pilates, and don't constantly ruminate on things. Deal with it, write it down, clear it out, find somebody you can talk to. There are various ways of doing it, but we need to manage our chronic stress, because that causes enormous damage to our health, and particularly our cardiovascular health at the end of the day. Sleep is important because it affects our weight and the ability to lose weight. We need to get into routines and sleep properly. Don't eat before going to bed. Don't exercise after dinner either. You can walk, but don't do anything strenuous, because then you're just switching on different hormones again, and you're not going to sleep well. If you need to get a hot bath, or use a hot water bottle, or some way, read a book, put the lights down, as you're getting towards the later in the evening, to make sure that you get a good night's rest. And we need to be aware also of medicines that are taken. Antihistamines have a negative impact. Stimulants can increase your blood pressure. Cold medications can increase your blood pressure. Certain of the pain medications contain caffeine to increase the absorption of different things. That can increase your blood pressure. Steroids also have an impact on your blood pressure at the end of the day. So all of these things need to be taken into account if you want to try and improve and get your blood pressure back under control again. And remember, it is a treatable condition. It's something that you can treat. And very often we find if we can just get the healthy lifestyle back in place, we can in actual fact reduce meds that people are on, or get rid of them altogether. And that you can in actual fact live a life. I'm a 62-year-old. I use no chronic medication, never have. I don't need to, and I have the health stats of a healthy 25-year-old. So it can be done. Then looking to Neolife and some of the supplements that we've got, magnesium glycinate, we've got that, which in fact relaxes the blood vessels. It also helps sleep, and I use it pretty much almost on a daily basis as well. It helps because I do a lot of exercise as well, and then relaxes my muscles and keeps things in place so that I can then get a good night's rest. And magnesium also helps balance the potassium. So our product, the Neolife Magnesium, brilliant product to use. And then CoQ10. CoQ10 that we've got is really good for heart health. If you have somebody taking statins, they actually need to be taking CoQ10 as a supplement, because the statins actually impact on that, and they affect the production of the CoQ10. And these things are also really important for mitochondrial health. And mitochondrial health, you must understand, drives everything really, because that's where it produces the energy. We need those healths, and that's also, as I say, the TRNN, where TRNN comes in as far as mitochondrial health is concerned, and how important it is. So just remember that product as well. Our salmon oil omega-3, it's anti-inflammatory, it's good for cardiovascular health and brain health at the end of the day. And the thing with the taking of the having things that impact on our cholesterol at the end of the day, like the statins, they cause and are causing what is being referred to now as you're getting the thing of type 3 diabetes, which is really the cognitive diseases like Alzheimer's and dementia, and it's becoming a bigger and bigger problem, and it's not necessary. There are ways that we can prevent it. Our product, lipotropic adjunct, it effectively keeps lipids emulsified in the blood, so it's also good for the transport of cholesterol. And that's also important, is it's not only a balance between the different types of lipid proteins within our blood, but a vehicle which keeps it moving and keeps everything in good order. Lipotropic adjunct also contains the B vitamins, which reduce the risk of artery damage due to homocysteine, and keeps all of that in balance. So it's a great product that we can recommend to people. Pro Vitality is a brilliant product containing right across the board. It contains potassium, it contains magnesium, it's got calcium in it, it has multivitamin, omega-3, TRNN, and the carotenoids. So Pro Vitality is on its own an absolutely brilliant product that we can use with all the different things that we need to be able to help for keeping blood pressure under control. Botanical Balance is particularly useful when it comes to diabetes and pre-diabetes. It helps manage our insulin and sugar levels. The products in that really, just as I say, if people are tending towards pre-diabetes and so on, it's a great product to be able to use. And then of course the multivit, which contains the potassium, magnesium, and calcium. So all things that are necessary in order to try and keep and manage our blood pressure at the end of the day. So I hope that's been useful. I hope that you've been able to find some interesting things in there. You've been able to understand, what is causing high blood pressure, the things that we can do to prevent it, and then also just the amazing products that we've got in the Neolife range that we can use to recommend to people to help with all of these things, because not everybody can get to the best nutrients and diets and so on, but lifestyle is absolutely important, and then the use of the supplements where we need to. Thanks very much, everybody, and I hope you've enjoyed that. And please, if you have any questions, let Monica know. I'm very happy to take emails, and if you want to contact me, my information is there. So thanks very much, and have a great weekend. Cheers. It's Bobby.